Jesus can remove alienation from God. Life is full of changes for most people, some pleasant, while others are not. For those who believe in Jesus Christ, it's important to reflect on our lives before and after we received Him. In Colossians chapter 1, the Apostle Paul provides an impressive summary of who Jesus Christ is in verses 15 through 20. Following that, in verses 21 through 23, Paul highlights the greatest change in our lives, our reconciliation with God through Jesus. Paul writes, "Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. But now He has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death to present you holy in His sight, without blemish and free from accusation, if you continue in your faith, established and firm, and do not move from the hope held out in the gospel." Paul states the greatest change brought about through the gospel of Jesus, and he explains it from God's perspective. God understood that we were not simply separated from Him, we were alienated from Him, thinking of ourselves as autonomous from Him. For the most part, this played out in our minds through self-centered thinking that we thought entitled us to behave in ways that God says is evil. The chasm between us and God was enormous, even unbreachable, and we were happy with that, not caring that we were powerless to change it. However, the God we were comfortable ignoring and denying was not satisfied with the status quo. So He acted, sending His Son Jesus to create a way for us to become united with Him. It was not Jesus' good living, nor was it His miracles and charitable acts that achieved this. No, it was Jesus' death on the cross. Paul helps us understand God's perspective and purpose in sending His only Son to be crucified. He explains that it was to present you holy in His sight, without blemish and free from accusation before God. Jesus' physical crucifixion was the necessary coming together of mankind's ultimate rejection of God and God's ultimate judgment of mankind's sin against Him. As Peter states, Jesus personally carried our sins in His body on the cross as our substitute. In fact, God unleashed the entirety of His wrath for all of our sins upon Jesus, concluding with Jesus' death. But then Jesus was resurrected on the third day. He's alive. He's conquered death, and He's victorious over the death penalty against our sin. Now, you and I are called to trustingly believe that God and Jesus did all that for us. If we believe that we have been united with Jesus in a death like His, we shall certainly be united with Jesus in a resurrection like His. That's Romans chapter 6, verse 5. In response to our belief in Jesus taking God's wrath for our sin and Jesus' resurrection, we are gifted by God with forgiveness, cleansing, and new spiritual life. Plus, we receive God's promise of a new resurrected body when Jesus returns for His church, should our bodies die before that great event. This is Paul's point in Colossians. God has reconciled you. Jesus has already done everything to make it possible for us to be reconciled, joined with God, both now and forever. Through trusting belief in Jesus as our substitute on the cross, we enter fulfillment of God's purpose, which is to present you holy in His sight, without blemish and free from accusation. God transfers us from being alienated to being an adopted child, a true friend, gifted with His acceptance of us. This is the ultimate gift of God's grace through Jesus Christ. I'm Lincoln Forlong, and you can view the transcripts of the pastor's pen, including Bible references, at focusbiblechurch.com.